The afternoon sun burned through the dusty windows of the old cafe where Rowan Vale sat hunched over his lukewarm tea, trying to convince himself everything was going to be okay. Outside, cars moved like indifferent shadows across the street, and people walked past with the kind of ease he had forgotten how to feel. His worn work boots, still damp from the morning rain, left faint prints on the tile floor. Nothing in his life felt stable anymore, but he kept breathing, kept pushing, because his little girl, his entire world, needed him, and that's why he was even in the cafe at that moment. He had a second interview for a local maintenance job nearby, hoping it would be the first step toward rebuilding some kind of life after months of scraping by. But Rowan had no idea that today wouldn't be remembered for the job interview he hoped to pass. It would be remembered for the moment his path collided with hers. Seren Ward, the woman who would one day change everything for him, though she looked heartbreakingly lost when he first noticed her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Spark so our stories can keep touching more hearts. Seren sat at the table across the cafe, dressed in a simple pale blue blouse and modest slacks that disguised the truth about her. No one could have guessed that the woman anxiously twisting her water glass was actually one of the country's youngest billionaires. Her family owned a global renewable energy company, but the weight of that name had never felt heavier. She wasn't here as the Seren Ward the world photographed and measured against impossible standards. She was here simply as a woman trying to find something real, something human, something that didn't smell like money or obligation. Unfortunately, the man she had met for lunch, dressed in a brand new blazer and dripping with shallow compliments, was nothing but greed disguised as charm. She kept trying to smile politely, hoping the date wouldn't get worse, but each minute felt more suffocating. Her date leaned back smugly, talking endlessly about the cars he wanted to buy, the investors he wanted to attract, and how lucky she must feel to be out with someone like him. Seren sat still, trapped in the kind of situation she had experienced too many times, where no one cared to know her, only what they could gain from her. What she desired most was something simple yet rare, authentic kindness. Rowan noticed her discomfort from the corner of his eye. He wasn't the type to get involved in strangers' business, but something in Seren's tight shoulders and trembling fingers tugged at him. He recognized fear and embarrassment too well. He had lived it, and his instincts sharpened when he saw the man she was with grip her wrist in a way that made her flinch. Rowan stood before he consciously decided to, guided by something deeper than logic. He approached the table slowly, giving her time to see him coming so he wouldn't startle her. He pretended he recognized her, pretending she was an old friend he had suddenly spotted, and introduced himself as if their meeting were planned. Seren's eyes widened with both surprise and relief. She understood immediately. She played along, excusing herself from the date and moving with Rowan toward the exit. Once outside, Seren exhaled shakily, sunlight scattering through the leaves above them like fragile pieces of hope. Rowan kept a respectful distance, checking to make sure she truly felt safe. Seren thanked him, still trying to steady her breath. Rowan noticed her fighting not to break down in public, and he simply nodded, letting the silence be gentle instead of heavy. She expected him to ask if she was okay or to lecture her about trusting people. Instead, he offered her something rare, quiet reassurance without expectations. She sensed immediately that this man was different. Rowan eventually walked her halfway down the street, until she felt calmer. Seren asked if there was anything she could do to repay him, but Rowan shook his head and said she didn't owe him anything. He told her he just hoped her day would get better. Nothing more. Then he turned to leave, adjusting the strap of the old backpack slung over his shoulder. That simple act, that humble exit, struck Seren harder than she could explain. He didn't ask for her number, didn't hint at future contact, didn't seek her attention, and because of that, something inside her shifted. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a billionaire or a headline, but as a human being. But fate wasn't finished with them yet. Later that afternoon, Rowan rushed toward his daughter's school, hoping he wasn't late for dismissal again. His interview had run longer than expected, and his phone battery had died, leaving him unable to call the school office. When he arrived, breathless and overwhelmed, he found little Maren Vale sitting on a bench by the gate, swinging her small legs patiently. She was 7 years old, bright-eyed, curly-haired, and always carrying a tiny backpack covered in hand-sewn patches Rowan had stitched himself. She greeted him with a grin that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. As he lifted her into a hug, Rowan apologized softly, promising he would do better. He hated failing her in even the smallest ways. What Rowan didn't notice at first was the sleek silver SUV parked across the street. Seren sat inside, watching as Rowan reunited with his daughter. She had been passing by on her way back from a charity meeting and spotted him unexpectedly. Something about the scene pulled her in. The tenderness in the way he held his daughter, the exhaustion hiding behind his smile, the love so evident in his eyes. It touched her more deeply than she expected. In that moment she realized he wasn't just kind. He was a father carrying the world on tired shoulders, doing everything he could with almost nothing. Over. The next few days, Seren couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to know him better, not as a rescuer from a bad date, but as the man he truly was. She returned to the cafe at the same hour several times, hoping to cross paths again. On the fourth day, she finally did. Rowan entered the cafe in his worn jacket, holding a folder with what looked like job application papers. He spotted her and hesitated, unsure if he should approach. When she offered him a warm smile, his shoulders relaxed and he walked over. Seren thanked him again for what he had done, but Rowan insisted it wasn't necessary. They ended up talking for over an hour. Rowan shared bits of his life, the loss of Maren's mother years ago, his promise to raise his daughter with gentleness, and his ongoing struggle to find stable work. He never complained, he only explained. Seren listened closely, moved by his honesty. She didn't reveal who she was, not yet, because she wanted to be known as herself, not as the heir to a billion-dollar empire. Their connection slowly deepened over the next weeks. Seren found excuses to visit the cafe, to spend time with Rowan and Maren, and even offered to tutor Maren in her school subjects. Rowan was hesitant at first, but he couldn't deny how much Maren lit up whenever Seren visited, and every time Seren knelt beside Maren with patient kindness, Rowan's heart warmed in ways he hadn't allowed in years. But as their bond grew, so did Rowan's fears. He viewed Seren as someone far above him, a graceful, talented, kind woman who surely came from a better world than his. He had no idea she was hiding the truth because she cherished the simplicity of their growing friendship, terrified of losing the one person who treated her like she wasn't a walking bank account. Then, one bright Saturday morning, everything changed. Rowan took Maren to the community park for a picnic. Seren met them there with homemade sandwiches and a basket full of fresh fruit. Maren laughed freely as they played simple games, and Rowan found himself stealing glances at Seren when she wasn't looking. He felt happiness, real happiness, for the first time in years, but the peace of the moment was shattered when two reporters suddenly recognized Seren. They approached with cameras and questions, shattering the bubble of simplicity she had tried so hard to protect. Rowan stared in shock as the truth unraveled before him. Seren Ward, his friend, Maren's tutor, the woman he had begun to quietly care for, was not a struggling artist like she had told him. She was the heiress millions followed, the billionaire people tried to impress. Rowan's chest tightened. He lifted Maren protectively, stepping back from the chaos as Seren tried to stop the reporters. She looked at Rowan with pleading eyes, silently begging him to understand. But Rowan's fear and insecurity screamed louder than her unspoken words. He thought he had been naive, foolish to believe someone like her would be in his world for any reason other than pity. He left the park quickly, heart pounding, torn between hurt and disbelief. But Seren didn't let that be the end. The next morning, she found Rowan at the small repair shop where he had just begun working part-time. The sun was bright and unforgiving overhead, casting sharp shadows across the pavement. Seren approached slowly, her voice soft yet unwavering. She apologized for not telling him the truth sooner, explaining her fear of losing something genuine. She told him she didn't want him for his money, his status, or anything he could give.